didn't apply for it. He was hinting to me already, parang kahit wala pa yung boto, that he wanted to be there more. Parang gano'n eh. Pero sabi ko nga, tumakbo ako para maglingkod bilang representante, pero pag tinawag ka ng Pangulo, di ba, paano ka tatanggi? A better nation state. It's the duty of every Filipino.
We begin tonight with the nomination of Cavite Congressman Boying Remulla as Justice Secretary. Remulla says he was offered the position by presumptive President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., which he accepted.
Remulla was re-elected as Cavite's 7th District Representative, and accepting the offer to be Justice Secretary may render his congressional post vacant. Comelec says it is up to Congress to decide whether or not it will legislate in special elections or designate a caretaker congressman for Remulla's district. Time for today's biggest headlines. I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Ed Lingao. You're watching The Big Story. We are now getting a clearer picture as to how Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s cabinet will look like. This as 4 more people finally accepted the offer to be cabinet secretaries.
That includes posts for the Justice, Labor, and Migrant Workers departments, as well as the National Economic and Development Authority. Marlene Alcaide with The Big Story.
A little over a month before his proclamation, presumptive President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s cabinet is slowly taking shape. One of the latest to join is Cavite's 7th District Representative Boying Remulla, who accepted the offer to be the next Justice Secretary.
Pag tinawag ka ng Pangulo, di ba, paano ka tatanggi? It's a very rare opportunity given to a lawyer like us.
In a press conference, Marcos Jr. cited Remulla's years in public service as his primary consideration.
He has a great many years of experience in government, number one, and what many people do not know is that he's actually a very, very good lawyer, and so I think he will fit very nicely into the DOJ.
But Remulla just got re-elected in his district. He says he is willing to leave his post, opening 2 scenarios for Cavite's 7th district. Either a special election is held or a caretaker is assigned. Aside from Remulla, Marcos Jr. also finally named a member of his economic team. He tapped former National Economic and Development Authority Chief Arsenio Balisacan to lead NEDA once again. He previously headed the agency during the Aquino administration. Marcos's camp confirmed that Balisacan agreed to take on the role.
Mukha namang tumutugma ang aming pag-iisip tungkol sa approach natin dito sa mga darating na ilang taon when it comes to the economic managers.
Meanwhile, Senator Amy Marcos is encouraging her brother to consider Energy Regulatory Commission Chairman Agnes de Vanadera to head the Energy Department. But Marcos Jr. says he needs more time to fill his cabinet, especially his economic team.
We're working very hard on the other departments and dahan-dahan naman. We are beginning to fill the positions.
Marcos's spokesperson, Attorney Vic Rodriguez, also confirmed that former Labor Chief Bienvenido Laguesma and migrant workers advocate Toots Ople agreed to head the Labor and Migrant Workers departments respectively. For News 5, Marlene Alcaide, we are One News.
As he stands to be the next Justice Secretary, what are his initial plans? That big question and more with Cavite's 7th District Congressman Boying Remulla. Congressman Boying, welcome to The Big Story and thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Ed, and good evening, Gretchen.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for accepting, sir. Sir, first of all, your priorities. Ano yung una ninyo sa listahan?
Well, of course, kung paano pabibilisan ang dispensation of the justice. Well, it starts all with communication, the paperwork that enters the department. We have to see the aging process. We call it kasi I worked with the PMS for 30 months. We call it the aging process. Pag may pumasok na sulat, meron kaming chart kung saan pumupunta ang bawat dokumento. At yan, pag naipit sa isang lugar, alam mo may problema na. So it has to be done that way. No? We have to act quickly on communications, complaints, and other matters that have to be taken up by the department. And we have to pinpoint the responsibility for every action that has to be done para talagang on the go ang department.
Yes, sir.
Makikita talaga.
Yes, sir. Parang housekeeping, Sir Balay. Get the entire house in order first in terms of administrative and management priorities.
Yes, and of course, hindi naman, we do not have to reinvent the wheel, no? Ang isang bagay pa, yung ating jail system, dapat makita natin na lahat ba na nakakulong doon ay dapat nakakulong pa o pwede nang pakawalan. Yung bang boys and partner and parole, tama ba recommendations at pwede na ba aktuhan ng Pangulo? Lahat ng mga bagay na dapat gawin, dapat ang deadline laging yesterday. Yun po ang philosophy ko dyan.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Of course, everybody will be waiting for your action on that. Pero, sir, I may as well refer to our previous interview just a few minutes ago. We were talking to you on sa totoo lang. Well, if you don't mind, I'll continue that a bit now and then we can continue that further later on in the next program kasi we'll also have you in the next program. Pero, sir, among the things that you mentioned a while ago, sabi nyo kasi pinakamalaking kalaban natin ay ang mga malalaking korporasyon controlled by big media. I was wondering exactly what you meant by that, if you could go into particulars.
By Ed, yung mga big media, big corporations that also control big media and which weaponize big media against nation states. Ano yan phenomenon sa buong mundo yan that states are being savagely being brutalized, sabihin natin, by big media. Talagang parang the culture is being dictated, the liberalist culture is being dictated to the whole world. Kanya-kanyang kultura yan, di ba? There's nothing wrong with being liberal. But we have to look at the culture of every country. Hindi pwedeng ni-impose nila ang kanilang paningin sa ating lahat. Dapat pabayaan naman nila, bigyan nila ng laya ang bansa na tingnan ang kanyang sariling direksyon. Huwag nila ididikta dahil sa kanilang economic interest. Ang malungkot dyan, pag ang big business ay hawak din ng big media, na may weaponize at dinudurog talaga ang mga leader ng nation states. Sana naman maging mas responsible ang ating mga kasama sa media. I'm part of media too, Ed. I've been there for more than 15 years. And I want things to be fair, things to be frank. At in the end, talagang there are laws naman that deal with abuse of media power. Pero ang masama talaga pagka automatic na meron ng keywords na pumapasok. Sabihin natin sa ibang mga publications, pag sinabi na President-elect Bongbong Marcos, son of dictator kagad na sasabihin. Ba't kinakailangan negative tayo kagad? Ano ba ang problema nyo? Ba't ba kailangan maglagay na slant kagad ang ating mga kasama sa media? Ba't hindi natin iayos muna at sabihin na ating presidente ay ganito? Ba't kailangan sabihin mo munang masamang tao ang tatay niyan? Ganun ang paningin namin. Tama ba yan, Ed?
Pero sir, wouldn't that also as well intrude if you try to regulate that? Wouldn't you as well be intruding into the right of the free press and the right of free expression?
I'm not into regulating that, Ed. I never said I will regulate it. I'm just saying that I'm hoping that this is not weaponized. Di ba? Malaking difference yan, Ed. It's not within my power. That's the Constitution. May freedom of expression tayo. Although the Constitution says also na media should be owned by 100% Filipino entities.
Sir, we hope to continue this conversation in the next program. We will have you again later. So we'll have a longer discussion later, sir. If you don't mind, we have to cut it short because we are running out of time.
Sure,
this is this program. Sir, maraming salamat for joining us. We hope to see you in a few minutes. Thank you, sir.
Hopefully.
Incoming Justice Secretary Boying Remulla, maraming salamat for joining us tonight. With more positions filled up for the upcoming administration, how is Marcos Jr.'s cabinet going to look like? Gretchen gives us a rundown. Gretch?
Ed, so far, 7 cabinet positions have been confirmed by the Marcos camp. Presumptive Vice President Sara Duterte Carpio was the first to be appointed, and she will serve as the Secretary of Education, while former MMDA Chairman and Uniteam National Campaign Manager Ben-Hur Abalos was tapped to lead the Interior Department. Marcos's longtime Chief of Staff and spokesperson Attorney Vic Rodriguez will be Executive Secretary. As reported earlier, Cavite Representative Boying Remulla accepted the offer to be Justice Secretary. Now, along with him is former Labor Chief Bienvenido Laguesma, former NEDA Chief Arsenio Balisacan, and migrant workers advocate Susan Toots Ople. They also agreed to join Marcos Jr.'s cabinet. Laguesma will head the Labor Department, Balisacan will once again lead NEDA, while OPLE will take on the Department of Migrant Workers. These are the other big stories tonight. Apart from beefing up his future cabinet, presumptive President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. also had a packed day, meeting various diplomats in a bid to continue friendly ties. Meanwhile, tragedy at sea after a fast-craft passenger vessel caught fire in Real, Quezon, killing 7 passengers. Authorities are looking at engine failure as probable cause of the fire. And after dominating in 2019, the Philippines drops to the 4th spot in the Southeast Asian Games. The most shocking loss, basketball team Gilas settling for silver. These big stories after the break.
You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Ed Lingao.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. Presumptive President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. met with 4 diplomats from trade partner nations today.
During the courtesy visits, Marcos Jr. discussed with the diplomats matters ranging from power supply to climate change. For updates, we have mobile journalist Julie Baiza reporting from the Marcos Camp headquarters in Mandaluyong. Julie, how did the talks go?
At Gretchen, after taking a short break in Australia, presumptive President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. gets back to work. This time, meeting with diplomats from 4 different countries with strong ties to the Philippines.
Presumptive President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. had a packed day here at his Mandaluyong headquarters. He met with 4 diplomats, beginning with Japanese Ambassador Koshikawa Kazuhiko. The two discussed infrastructure projects under the Japan International Cooperation Agency, as well as the deployment of Filipinos to Japan. South Korean Ambassador Kim In-chul also paid a courtesy visit. They talked about the revival of the Bataan nuclear power plant amid the country's power supply problems.
At yung nakapunta na rito ng mga expert na nuclear power para tignan ang Bataan Nuclear Power Plant para makita kung ano ba ang maaring gawin. We will now study their recommendations and their findings.
High-tech farming, medicine manufacturing, and microfinance for small businesses were the agenda during Indian Ambassador Shambhu Kumaran's visit. Lastly, in a courtesy call with U.S. Chargé d'Affaires Heather Variava, climate change and the Mutual Defense Treaty with the U.S. were the topics.
Pinag-usapan namin the return or the re-signing or the extension of the VFA agreement and how it has to be redefined.
When it comes to his economic plans, though, Marcos admits that he might have little funding left for this year for another stimulus package. Recall that his cousin, Representative Martin Romualdez, endorsed by many to be the next speaker, proposed a new stimulus bill to be called Bayan Bangon Muli.
So meron pa tayong breathing room, pero konti na lang. And so that's why we will have to look to the new budget, the budget for 2023, which is presently being written.
Ed Gretchen Marcos Jr. also said he is cautious when it comes to the suggestion to sell the government's assets to pay off the government debts. Ed Gretchen?
Mobile journalist Julie Baiza reporting live from Mandaluyong. Thank you, Julie.
For the big story in sports, Team Philippines has sealed a fourth-place finish at the 31st Southeast Asian Games. It might be a disappointment, though, after securing the championship in 2019. This year is still one of the country's most productive showings in the biennial meet. A look into some of the country's best performances in Hanoi in my report. From overall champions in 2019, the Philippines drops to fourth place in the 31st Southeast Asian Games in Hanoi, Vietnam. The country copped 226 medals, 52 golds, 70 silvers, and 104 bronzes. Host Vietnam claimed the crown with 446 medals, followed by Thailand and Indonesia. But this was still one of the country's most productive showings in the biennial meet. Our delegates dominated in athletics, gymnastics, weightlifting, and boxing. Olympians Yumir Marshall, Haydrin Diaz, and EJ Obiena lived up to expectations, topping their events in comfortable fashion. But it was Kaloy Yulo who emerged as the most decorated Filipino athlete in Hanoi, clinching 5 golds in 7 events. Some also made history, like the Philippine women's football team, which finally reached the podium with a bronze, ending a 37-year drought. The Cebu Women's League of Legends, Wild Rift, earned the distinction as the first women champions in Southeast Asian Games esports history. Swimmer Chloe Isleta ended the country's 29-year gold medal drought in women's division after ruling the 200-meter backstroke event. And the country's bowling team, courtesy of Merwin Tan, also ended an 11-year dry spell with a gold in the men's singles event. The country hopes to build on the strong outing in Hanoi as they compete in major sporting events this year and beyond. Gretchen Ho, We Are One News. Meanwhile, after 2 years, the UAAP cheerdance competition has returned. And just like in past iterations of the event, fans and students from different universities were at it on social media. The cheerdance competition has often become a way for fans to joke around with the other universities. Such was the case, unfortunately, for UP, Ateneo, LaSalle, and UST during this year's competition. On the other hand, plenty were wowed by the performances of the Adamson Pep Squad, the NU Pep Squad, and the eventual winners, the FU Cheering Squad. For many, the 3 universities are now the so-called triumvirate in the cheerleading competition. Yours truly was even able to guess the eventual winners. Oh, Madam Aurin ako dyan.
Guess the eventual winners?
nahulaan ko.
Oh, namitaya ka, gano'n?
Oo, meron. Joke lang. Hindi, tumama rin ako sa isang guess ko na may Battle of Katipunan din. UP versus Ateneo, pang last place.
Tumataya ka.
Siniraan ko yung sarili ko
To
school.
ending.
Oo. Hindi, sabi nga nila, sa cheer dance, golden years daw noon. Yung UP versus UST. Pero ngayon nagbabago na. After nun, yung NU naman, yung ilang years sila nag-champion. Tapos yung FEU, this is their 3rd championship. So it's good for competition because they're new winners and also gives us hope. Kami mga Atenistang wala pang championship sa cheer dance.
Oo, wala na. Hindi ko na masyado naintindihan, pero yeah, I agree. Okay.
Congratulate mo na lang sila.
Congratulations, sila na.
FEU.
FEU, congratulations.
All right, time for another quick break. More of the big stories when we return.
investigation, the fire may have started due to engine error.
Ang napansin lang nila, biglang may pumutok sa ilalim sa ang namin sa engine room. At pagkasunod noon ay apoy na. It's either nag-overheat or may something doon na related doon sa engine ng barko na biglang pumutok.
A board of marine inquiry has also been convened. This is the second time Mercraft has been involved in an accident. The first was in 2017 when one of its vessels sank. This prompted the local government of Polillo to order the suspension of Mercraft's operations in their vicinity. For News 5, Mon Gualvez, We Are One News.
Another big story in sports. Gilas Pilipinas head coach Chot Reyes has taken the blame for the national team's botched gold medal bid in the 31st Southeast Asian Games. Marty Bautista with the story.
The country's national basketball teams are back in the country. First to arrive is men's team head coach Chot Reyes. Reyes has been at the center of criticism after Gilas Pilipinas' shocking loss to Indonesia in the gold medal match. This was the country's first loss in the biennial meet since 1989, ending a 3-decade reign which consisted of 13 straight gold medals. Reyes was quick to take the blame for the loss. However, he asked Pinoy fans to look at the end goal, which is the FIBA World Cup in August 2023.
And I take full responsibility, take full accountability for what happened. I apologize to all the stakeholders. I apologize to the Filipino people, the Federation, for letting the country down. But like I said, that's sports.
Gilas forward Matthew Wright also stepped in to defend Reyes.
If you can accept all the praise and the glory when we win, then you should be able to accept the criticism. So it's not really a big deal. I just think that it's unfair to Coach Chot.
Third-year Ravenna, meanwhile, acknowledged the improvement of Indonesia from the time he faced the team in 2020 for the FIBA Asia Cup qualifiers.
You can obviously tell that basketball is really growing and developing quick in Asia, and they really put up a fight.
Meanwhile, the saving grace for Team Philippines was the women's team, who secured its second straight SEA Games gold. Despite losing their last match against Malaysia 96-93, the team still owned the best record at 4-1 and wound up with the gold.
What are you guys gonna do now? Celebrate?
Sleep, party, repeat.
So how are you gonna celebrate with that goal?
Oh, dude, I'm gonna party.
For News 5, Marty Bautista, We Are One News.
And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. On behalf of Robbie Lampay, I'm Ed Lingao.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. We are One News. Have a good evening.